Alrighty. So, I don't know. I feel like I keep doing a lot of economic videos. So, I gotta steer clear from that for a little bit. But, I have to debunk our favorite libertarian, John Stossel. Is he the grandpa of libertarianism? Because if he is, I guess, nah. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's a really good, well-known libertarian, and I love his devil advocate's approach to things. I really do. But I wouldn't. I guess I couldn't say he's the grandpa of libertarianism, right? Yeah, I don't think I can say that. What I can say though is that John Stossel has done a few good segments. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with right wing libertarians. I really don't. I just think they are massively wrong on economics. That's not even saying that I'm right on economics. I mean, everybody has their own standpoint on the right economic system. I'm sure there are things that I'm wrong on, but yeah. So yeah, we're gonna talk about Scandinavia, and we're gonna talk about why it is not a socialist success, even though it kind of is. Okay, and I wanna and I'm right from the outset. I know Scandinavia is not a socialist. These aren't socialist nations. I understand that they're social democracies. So I am not in any way, shape, or form using this as a success for socialism per se, but I am going to say that they have a lot of socialistic policies that do prove that leftism does work, and it prioritizes people and democracy over profit. That's what left-wing policies are supposed to do. But I'm digressing. Let's do this. Let's kill it. Let's own it.
Today, many Americans don't like capitalism. Socialism would be better, they say. Not repressive Russian or Venezuelan socialism, but democratic socialism, like what's practiced in Scandinavia.
I think we should look to countries like Denmark, like Sweden. Say, what, you want to be like Sweden? Kinda. Sounds pretty good.
People interviewed in this just-released PBS documentary say America should be more like Sweden.
It seems like it's like a place that like no problems or something.
It is a socialist economy.
Volvos and socialized medicine.
And Volvo is now a Chinese company. Welcome to Stockholm, Sweden. My name is Johan Norberg, and this is where I was born and raised.
Johan Norberg made this documentary because he wanted to set the record straight.
Sweden is not socialist because the government doesn't own the means of production. To see that.
Fun fact about Stockholm, Sweden. That's where we got the famous Stockholm Syndrome term for victims of kidnapping and whatnot who actually end up catching feelings, not sexual feelings per se, but sympathetic feelings, empathetic feelings for their aggressor. Basically seeing them as a victim or a nice person. Because they spent so much time with them at that point, they're like, oh, you know what? I was wrong about this person. They had good intentions when they kidnapped me. Just mental gymnastics. But it was a hostage situation in Stockholm, and that's where they got that from. But I'm digressing.
You have to go to Venezuela or to Cuba or North Korea. But we did have a period in the 1970s and 1980s when we had something that resembled socialism. A big government that taxed and spent heavily. And that's the period in Swedish history when our economy was going south.
So much so that even socialists complained about the high taxes.
Astrid Lindgren, who wrote the very popular children's books, Pippi Longstocking, for instance, she was a social democrat, but she had made a lot of money from her books.
There's a lot of famous Americans. Rosa Luxemburg, Helen Keller, Britney Spears came out as a social democrat, or I don't know if she's a democratic socialist. Martin Luther King was a socialist, actually, which I found very interesting. So the fact I'm really huge into plays and musicals. I used to be, I used to go to a performing arts high school, so I find it very interesting that the author of Pippi Longstocking, actually, or the play, was actually a democratic socialist, or maybe she was just a social democrat.
Found that she paid 102% in taxes.
She wrote this angry essay about a witch who was quite mean and vicious, but not at all as vicious as the Swedish tax authorities.
And yet, even though taxes were high, they did not bring in enough money to fund Sweden's welfare state.
There were waiting lines to get health care. People couldn't get the pension that they thought that they depended on for the future. At that point, the Swedish population just said, enough, we can't do this.
So in the United States, and in Scandinavia is much smaller than the United States, but that doesn't mean that's why they can do this. The reason why they can do that is because of high taxation and whatnot. Now, the safety nets, I'm not gonna lie, I don't believe that they're cutting back, maybe here and there, but this idea that people don't have health care, or that they're backing into private insurance for health care over there is because they're losing benefits, that's definitely not true. But Scandinavia, for the most part, are still giving these people their benefits, and they're still making things happen. And a lot of these places have had socialized healthcare since the late 40s. So, yeah.
Sweden then reduced government's role. They cut public spending, privatized the national rail network, abolished certain government monopolies, eliminated inheritance taxes, and sold state-owned businesses like the maker of Absolute Vodka.
Lower taxes, reform the pension system so that it wasn't unsustainable.
The results from the spending cuts and privatization?
This impoverished peasant nation developed into one of the world's richest countries.
I'm not against, I mean, and these are all good things, but none of these debunk, like, the good that these left-wing policies in Scandinavia have done for people. I mean, socialized medicine, free education, and healthcare. They give, I think in Sweden, they give their college students like a $900 monthly stipend or something like that, just to go to college. And because of the labor unions having collective bargaining for wages, a minimum wage isn't even needed. As of right now in the United States, their unions don't even exist right now. Like, they're just non-existent. So, you know, we see it in Scandinavia. So it's like, do we need a minimum wage per se? Not necessarily. But I would like to have something in place where at the end of the day, the bare necessities do need to be given to people who work 40 hours a week. Because if you work 40 hours a week, yeah, you should be given the bare necessities. You shouldn't be given wage slavery and economic servitude. That's not fair, and that's not moral, and that's not right.
Here, Sweden is this socialist paradise.
We do have a bigger welfare state than the U.S., higher taxes than the U.S., but in other areas, when it comes to free markets, when it comes to competition, when it comes to free trade, Sweden is actually more free market.
That free market pays for Sweden's big welfare program.
Today, our taxes pay for pensions. You call it social security. For 18-month paid parental leave, government-paid childcare for working families. But having the government manage all of these things didn't work well. So we had to manage it in another way.
They privatized.
We realized in Sweden that with these government monopolies, we don't get the innovation that we get when we have competition.
And this is particularly true for the...
Yeah, innovation, you don't need monetary incentive. That's complete bullshit. Like, I mean, I use this specific point all the time, and I say, look, I mean, just look at cavemen. Look at how humans lived thousands and thousands of years ago. They weren't paying each other money to go out and hunt. They were hunter gatherers. Basically, they collectivized and they helped each other hunt, so that they made hunting easier. They innovated spears to make hunting easier. So innovation does not need monetary incentive. People innovate because they're bored, for self betterment, things of that nature. Hungry, bored, just you name it. There are many reasons why people innovate. So that's bullshit.
School system.
Sweden switched to a school voucher system that lets parents pick their kids' school and forces schools to compete.
And one of the results that we've seen is not just that the private schools are better than the public ones, but even the public schools in the vicinity of private schools, they often improve because they have to.
Sweden's version of Social Security was going broke, so Sweden privatized that too. Privatized the pension system. That terrifies people.
And obviously that scares people, but when they realized that the alternative was that the whole pension system would collapse, they thought that this is much better than nothing.
Now, the bulk of pensions is really...
This is an argument that Social Security does not work. In fact, our Social Security system is solvent. It has over $1 trillion surplus. I think trillions of dollars of surplus. I could be wrong on that, but as far as I know, it at least has $1 trillion surplus. So it is solvent. Now we're going to only be able to pay, I think it was 70 to 75% of said pensions in 2037. But the only thing you have to do that is just raise the cap on taxes, or at least raise it to a progressive tax, so that we can keep it going. But this idea that Social Security is going to end and that it's unsustainable, that's not true. And this also shows you that there are countries the policy that we want, it truly depends on the economy of that economy and if they can afford it or not. Like, yes, Scandinavia, they use high taxation for a lot of these programs, but here in the United States, we wouldn't even have to borrow money. We're talking about Medicare for all, and free education, and universal daycare, family paid time, family paid leave, and all that good stuff. All of that stuff, we don't have to borrow money. You just have to cut spending and reallocate the sources, and a lot of that spending could come from the military budget. We spend $717 billion on the military right now in illegal and offensive wars in countries that never attacked us. So we have all this money to afford wars and $1 trillion bailouts for Wall Street, but we don't have enough money for education or healthcare. Yet every other developed nation is to some degree has a safety net for these people. And I'm not opposed to a realistic solution into the capitalist system we have to publicly fund schools, but at the same breath having independent teachers and contractors and what have you work in these buildings. I'm a libertarian. I'm not about propagandizing the entire country. I don't want all teachers to be government officials and what have you. And I don't want to have this big government curriculum that teaches people that, like, Abraham Lincoln was like a hero or whatever. He wasn't. He was a war criminal and he was a racist. And I want to have a decentralized education system to where states can maybe not even states, but even counties decide states and counties come together to decide what's the best curriculum. And I think we should have a legit and we should have a legit what's it called? Damn, I can't even think about it. We should have a standard, maybe a standard based on like legit evidence from like the experts saying this is what kids need to learn in first grade, second grade, yada yada yada. I want the experts to decide what's the best curriculum for people in the first grade, second grade, and all the grade levels that we have. They should set what's best. And then after that, then the schools can decide what they want to do based on the local and state governments, right? Like, come on, we have that right now. We don't want a system where you got Big Daddy government brainwashing you and telling you what you should believe in. That's not what I want. I want productive and I want productive programs within the education system that's going to teach people how to change tires, how to do their taxes, how to write resumes, things that are actually going to help them. Not this bullshit algebra 2 and trig for people who, don't need to really know that stuff. I mean, do psychologists really need to know algebra 2 and trig? No, they don't. So why don't we have... And I also like the idea of, having art and what have you. I'm digressing, aren't I? We're talking about this. I'm digressing. I'm sorry.
Contribution defined. So if things are going well for Sweden, pensions are increasing. But if things are going less well, pensions are automatically lowered, which basically takes away from politicians the ability to buy votes by just promising higher pensions and letting future generations pay.
And when it comes to taxes, what Sweden does may surprise you.
Low-income earners in Sweden pay a lot more than low-income earners in America. So despite the fact that Sweden looks like sort of a socialist country which taxes the rich exorbitantly high, the truth is the opposite.
People who earn below average income pay up to 60% in taxes.
This is the dirty little secret about the Swedish tax system. We don't take from the rich and give to the poor. We squeeze the poor because they are loyal taxpayers.
Not taking more from the rich. School choice, privatization. Sweden is anything but socialist.
You can't turn your backs to the well, to the creation of wealth.
You can watch the full documentary, Sweden, Lessons for America, at freetochoose.tv.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you have it. They were trying to make, arguments for free market solutions. And, at the end of the day, like, labor unions and collective bargaining, those are really things that the right opposes in this country. They think unions hurt more than they help, which right now, the unions that we do have, yeah, they would be right on that. But that's just a matter of government and capitalist corruption going on. Or maybe I shouldn't blame the whole capitalist system, but, the people who take advantage of the system and lobby and get all these special benefits. But, we've seen leftism work in Scandinavia, and, they kick our asses in almost all subjects, including healthcare. Some of the best healthcare systems the best healthcare systems in the world have universal healthcare within it. Some form or another of universal healthcare or what have you. And these policies give people opportunity, and it puts more money into the economy. Because when you have things like a living wage, when you have labor unions bargaining for a living wage, you put more money in the economy. And when you have people spending more money, that creates more demand for goods and services, which creates to more jobs. Free education. Now you don't have to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt to become a doctor or a lawyer lawyer or something that's or engineer, something very essential to this country. And now you have Americans fulfilling those vacant jobs that can't be provided by Americans because they don't have the education level to do it. So what else do we got? Family paid leave works. You get to go home instead of working 50, 60 hours a week with no benefits or anything like that. Now you get to have mandated time off. You get to follow your passion. You get to go back to school, or you just get to spend more time with your loved ones and your family and your kids. These policies liberate people economically on a scale that capitalism never can, because at the end of the day, the main function of capitalism is to make a profit. That's the main goal of capitalism. And don't get me wrong, I love social democracy and democratic socialism. I think that's the only true form of a humanized capitalist system. But we also have to remember we still have a situation where we have a system where the fruits of our labor are being stolen. And we have workplaces where one person gets to make the decision, all while screwing you over, giving you no negotiating skill, no negotiating powers, and just literally stealing your labor. So, yeah, they tried, but they failed. Nobody is saying that the free market is inherently wrong. The only thing I think that's wrong is that we have a system where where profits are put over democracy and people. That's where I have a problem. But, it's good that Scandinavia has a legit system, a legit free market system. That's good. And the fact that they have this welfare state and they have more billionaires in Norway and Sweden than we do, that's nothing I can really debate. But what I will always debate and what I will always fight for is the idea that the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and putting people in democracy is much more important than profit or capital ever will be.